is Rumor, back at my tarot table after my month-and-a-half long journey through the US of A. Finally doing a VR to Kelly Bear's 54321 tarot tag after being tagged by the lovely Juli at Peekaboo Rose, Marlene Teresa, and Candy of Candy Soul and Soil. So the particular spin I am putting on this is 54321 Tarot, the Halloween edition. So that is the lens through which I am responding to this tag, given the spooky season that is now upon us. So let's get started with the 5 decks, which means I'm removing this, but this will be back. So my little lineup here that I've got going on for this season, and where to begin. Actually, I think I'd like to start with this one. And so the first deck I will start with here is the Raven's Prophecy Tarot, which makes a lot of us think of Halloween because the orange and black and these big bold orange borders with predominantly black backgrounds in the cards. It just feels very Halloween-y, but this is not a Halloween deck. The orange borders are actually a nod to a main character in the Raven Cycle series on which this deck is based, who drives an orange Camaro. And my mind was blown on that factoid by the 3 Girls, 1 Deck who have done a mini-series on this deck specifically, the Raven's Prophecy, speaking about it in tandem with the book series that inspired it by Maggie Stiefvater, none of the above as far as pronunciation goes. I'm not sure how I would say the surname. But anyway, I didn't even realize that myself. That's why Maggie would have gone for the orange there, but I love that. But in the meantime, it really does help bring out a very Halloween-y spirit as well. Very, very pumpkin orange. And mine, just so you know, in case you get a copy, this is mass market. I've edged mine in black, and in doing so, some had kind of bled onto my orange borders here. So I decided to just lean into it and deliberately outline it. And I kind of like how that turned out. But anyway, so yeah, as a Halloween deck, this deck just specifically, you could use it all year round, and I do use it all year round. My first copy of this, I actually trimmed off these orange borders so it would feel less autumnal, less Halloween, and it lives in my ritual bag as one of my top favorite decks ever. It was also one of my first tarot decks, so it's very special to me. And again, something I would happily and do pull out all year round, but nonetheless, there is something very atmospheric, even if you took off the Halloween orange borders, just the sense of evening, of the ravens, the moonlight. Sometimes you catch a glimpse of a fire, which just feels like an autumnal campfire. And anyway, it just, again, that general aesthetic, and also having read the books. I have not read the full series yet, but I'm into book 3 right now, and they have a wonderful paranormal spooky atmosphere, and it's a book series I enjoy reading at this time of year, so it makes sense that I'd want to bring out this deck for this time of year. It just gives me a sense of being out in the woods at night. But it's just beautiful. I love the simplicity of the images because you are not to be fooled in thinking that it means it's simple what you draw from them. can actually be quite profound. Sometimes less is more. And there is just a lot that intuitively jumps out at me when I look at these, even when it is something as simple as 3 roses with these 3 lights. But yes, I heart Raven's Prophecy, Tarot, and whoop, I will speak a bit more to that in a bit. Oh, wait, love this card. If you've seen my previous videos where I've talked about this deck, oh, this card is so special to me. All right then, moving along, because I have a feeling this is going to be a long video. But that is just one deck that really kind of sets the scene for me autumnally as we are now in October. And another one doing so to usher in a bit of the macabre is the Madame Lydia Wilhelmina's Tarot of Monsters, the Macabre, and Autumn Scenes. Appropriate, no? Pretty obvious choice. This is like the spooky equivalent of the Revival Art Tarot. I think it looks so much like it, including these fine gold borders. But yeah, you get this beautiful aesthetic of old world type paintings, but then with all of these macabre elements strewn about. What could look like just regular pair of lovers here, and they've got not just skulls for heads, but animal skulls. So there's always, like at a glance, it might just look like an old painting you would seen at an art gallery. But then on closer inspection, there's always a little something that I don't want to say is off-putting, but just adds a little eerie element and kind of takes it out of this mundane world and into something monstrous. But it's not scary. I don't find this to be a scary deck. And arguably, you could bring this one out any time of year too. It's not Halloween specific. I say just as I draw a card with a freaking jack-o'-lantern on it. All right. The deck is disagreeing with me. Maybe because it is autumnal scenes. It is screaming that it wants to be used this time of year. But I'm just saying. If like Gothic is your vibe, see, it's doing it to me again. But yeah, this is just what makes you tick. Hey, pull it out whenever you want. So this is one I got last year, actually after the spooky season. So I have been looking forward to this year, really trying it out in the thick of October and into the lead up to Halloween. Samhain. Yeah, gorgeous. Next up, leaning further into the spooky feelings, bringing in the paranormal, the monsters, so the horror tarot. This is my second October working with this deck, and I straight away enjoyed it last year. I found myself scratching my head at some of the choices, and I think it was even more obscured for me as to why something was chosen for a certain card when I used the guidebook. So I actually just scrapped the guidebook. I don't even acknowledge it for this one, which I don't know. Some of you out there might actually love it, but I just felt like it didn't offer me any clarity if I was questioning what an image was supposed to be specifically in reference to that traditional tarot card. It is also quite difficult sometimes to read these little titles, but they're like a red shiny foil, which I do think is neat. It's just very small, but whatever. I love the borders on this, and I'm not generally a fan of borders. I'm not anti them, but I feel like they need to be just done right and not feel superfluous. And I think these, even though they're big and thick, it really does frame this imagery so well. And this is a card, I guess, Queen of Swords. I just remember the guidebook entry for this. It didn't really resonate with me, and the image itself doesn't, but detached from that description, I can kind of formulate in my own mind the characteristics of this figure being depicted here and how that might relate to the swords element, and specifically the queen. But you know, look at this. It's just, I love all the monster hands that might figure into the more pippish cards. Like, even if it's not depicting a scene, you still get that element. You've got mermen, gargoyles, ooh, creepy Jack in the Box. And this just says it all. I mean, here's the Fool. This is what kicks off this deck. And, you know, it's the, I don't know, I was going to call her a final girl, but we don't know if she's going to make it out of this situation. This could be the one that bites the dust first, sets up the rest of the horror tale to follow. But vampires and, yes, pippish on a lot of cards, but I like it. Like, it still evokes the theme of the deck. And so in this case, a spider web showing these pentacles, that works for me. But I do think that largely there is effort made. It doesn't feel like a lazy deck to me. And I love Abigail Larson's artwork. This makes me think like Blair Witch. And I don't really know what else to say about it other than I was considering putting this in purgatory. I thought perhaps my Madame Wilhelmina would take its place, but I mean, these decks really are so different from each other. I actually also like the cartoony essence of this deck. Just brings something else. And when I've done readings with it, I just also feel like even if I'm sort of not exactly sure how something directly fits with the card it's intended to represent, there's still something intuitive that comes across. I feel like these images really speak. And look at that. It's just, yeah, this is great atmosphere. Yeah, when I looked through the cards again as I was considering putting in purgatory, no. I feel like this one I will keep for a while. And I have edged mine in red. So that is the Horror Tarot that just came out last year, I believe. Also, that is a mass market like Raven's Prophecy. I neglected to mention before that Madame Wilhelmina's deck is, or is it Lydia Wilhelmina's deck, is independent. It is on and off available. I don't think it ever has gone officially out of print. It just seems like there are different print runs and there might be a wait in between. So I will link to the website in the description below so that you can keep your eye on it if it is of interest to you. Okay, so now really getting into Halloween, if those three decks just sort of set the atmosphere at this time where I'm starting to watch the horror movies, read these scary stories. Two decks specifically devoted to the holiday of Halloween itself are, first of all, the Trick or Tarot by Duck Soup. And this is also an independent deck. And it lives with a matching Lenormand deck that draws from a lot of the same images to be found in the tarot, certainly the same collage style, and is a lot of fun when I'm in the mood to read Lenormand. But tarot is where I mostly live, and this came in tuck box. Look at that. Yeah. So again, kind of can't blame any of us for thinking Raven's Prophecy is a Halloween deck when it also has, you know, an orange and black back like this. I did edge mine in black. It originally had white edges. But was this in order? Oh, I put it in order. How about that? But this one was my first deck that I ever bought for the spooky season because it is just so my aesthetic. I love vintage. I love how old-timey these images are. There's something really nostalgic and kitschy about this deck. And also funny. As much as things can be scary, you have your vampires and other monsters, but you know, there's the element of the silliness. There's something that really makes me feel like a kid again when I work with this. It just, it captures what trick-or-treating and getting dressed up for Halloween felt like as a kid, like the world that I imagined being outside my front door once I stepped out to collect my candy. And speaking of, how cute. We've got our trick-or-treaters right there. And for strength, walking with the bear. So there's an innocence to it. This is the death card. It does not actually say death, but we have the number 13. And I mean, look at the pleasant expression on the woman's face. And then you see this little kid, I guess kind of like an apparition of a kid in a Superman costume. So even rendering that concept is just done in this sort of innocent way. Thoth titles, I believe, are used here. I have not studied the Thoth, but I am aware of the alternative titles. I don't believe Old Scratch is from that, though. This is probably this creator's own phrasing for the devil, but we bring in a little Day of the Dead element there. The Tower of Destruction. And yeah, I don't really need to keep yammering over this. I can just let the images speak for themselves. But just something that really harkens back, I mean, to a time before I was even alive, and yet I feel nostalgic for it. Just looks like something you would see on vintage greeting cards. And yeah, let's end on this cute one. Little pumpkin man struggling to carry his Halloween haul. So then this, again, is the Trick or Tarot. And for my fifth and final deck here, also dedicated to the fun and innocence and nostalgia of Halloween. The Trick or Treat Tarot, which I couldn't decide whether to edge in orange or purple, so I went with both. And this has also been put back in order, which is why these stripes are so evenly lining up. But of course, once I shuffle, it gets even more blended, but still looks cool, I think. And you know what? In the spirit of the youthful innocence of this deck, I think I just used Crayola marker for this. But wow. I have said it before about this deck. It is a sheer delight for me. I really do kind of want to use this one all year round. Like I there's nothing stopping any of us from using any of our decks whenever the heck we want to. I did refrain from doing so though, but I am telling you, I could not wait for October to roll around to pull this deck out again, because it just, it just nourishes my Halloween soul. The big void inside me that has been created after moving to the United Kingdom, where you would think with the atmosphere around here and all the history and friggin' ghosts that have to be out and about London, you would think that Halloween would be so huge here, and it is something that's been steadily growing since I moved here, but it's nothing compared to what it is in the States, and has even since grown to in the States. Since I was just visiting there, I mean, oh my gosh, I was seeing people decorating their homes already in early September. Which that's a bit much. I don't know that I would get started that early, but it was still such eye candy for me. I did love to see it, and I was drinking it up as much as I could before I came back here, where Halloween kind of goes to die. I mean, it's celebrated, there is a presence, but it's not like you're guaranteed to see some house on any given block to be all decked out for it. So this just takes me right back to, you know, what I loved about Halloween back in the US, when there was always a Halloween party to go to, where my biggest project every year was thinking of the next costume and then creating it. I used to get so into it, and that's kind of diminished over the years as there's just not as much festivity around it. Haven't really met many people around here that share the same enthusiasm. So I'm hanging out with the people in this deck. Like, these are my people. I love that there are adults as well as children in it. So it's not just a thing about the kiddos. It is absolutely a deck that celebrates the adults who love Halloween too and remain children at heart. And it's just fun because whereas other scary decks could be depicting actual monsters and such, this deck is just average folks in costume. And also in costume the way it's done in the US, where you can dress as anything that you want to be, really. Over here, it's focused on horror. You wouldn't dress like Mr. Rogers. You wouldn't. This would pass. But yeah, probably not doing like Cat in the Hat or a princess. I mean, maybe the little kids do, but the adults very much lean into strictly horror. So that kind of, I felt, limited my costume options after a while, kind of like hindered my creativity with it. But it is what it is, so. This is just so fun. So very grateful for this deck. I want to live in its world. And there you have it. So there were my 5 decks for this Halloween edition of 54321 Tarot. Again, the Raven's Prophecy Tarot, Madame Lydia Wilhelmina's Tarot, blah, 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 Horror Tarot, Tricker Tarot, and Trick or Treat Tarot. So getting into the books, in the spirit of Halloween, I am reading the 3rd installment of the Raven's Prophecy series. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. So this one is Blue Lily, Lily Blue, which followed first the Raven Boys and the Dream Thieves. And there is a 4th book. I just haven't gotten there yet. But as I mentioned before, this is the book series that inspired the Raven's Prophecy Tarot. So while not a tarot book in itself, for the purposes of this tag, I'm at least sharing it as tarot adjacent. And reading the series was brought about by my purchase of the Raven's Prophecy Tarot. I actually discovered the deck first. And when I learned that its symbolism was embedded through this series, that's what inspired it, I was interested in learning for myself what that was, really diving into this world. You can absolutely read with the Raven's Prophecy Tarot on its own without any knowledge of this series, but this just adds another layer of understanding for me. And again, that is exactly what the Three Girls, One Deck set out to do when they created their Raven's Prophecy mini-series, discussing the symbolism in the cards taken directly from the book. Another link I will have below of the playlist of those videos. But I am, pretty, kind of not quite halfway in. Look at my bookmark. This came from Owl Crate, which I subscribed to for a few months, a few years ago. We've got a little skeleton in its coffin with a book, and it's open, like it's still reading. And then a little Ouija planchet that says death before DNF. Ha ha ha. I do usually abide by that. I generally am a completionist. I want to finish what I start, but I feel like in recent years I have not finished in an increasing number of books. I guess I do DNF before death these days, but anyway. I'm enjoying this. Like I said before, this is a series I love reading at this time of year. I do love it so much that it's pathetic that it's like taking me years to actually read the entire series. But I think part of the reason of that is, one, kind of saving it for this time of year and switching to other books at other times. And also just like really wanting to savor the series. Of course, I can always reread it. But I know me, and probably before I reread it, I'm going to feel like, oh, there's still too much else in my queue that I need to get to. So it could take me a while to get back to it. And so I just kind of want to enjoy the firsts that I'm having with it, the things that can still shock and surprise me. And then I'll always have the reread to look forward to going forward, because I do feel this is a series I will reread. Not just because the story is so good, but the writing is so good. There is really a difference between styles out there. And there's a book I picked up just the other day at the airport when I was flying back to London the other day. It might be a DNF. We'll see. I've paused it for now because now I want to read this, but I just kind of wanted something in transit on the way back. And, it's just a writing style. It gets you from point A to point B, which is fine. It's an interesting enough plot. You could tell research went into it, but there's like not a richness to it where I am just enjoying phrasing. There's not like a rich texture to setting up the setting. And I don't know. All I can say is that Maggie, again, is it Stiefvater? I don't know. But she has this ability to just weave this intricate tapestry of words that just sucks you right into the world that she's built, and it's great. So I highly recommend this series, especially as something to dive into this time of year. So for my next tarot-related book, following on the last one, at the risk of being redundant with the decks that I've already shared, since the last one spoke to the Raven's Prophecy, and the next two are also going to speak to decks that I showed, I am trying to stick with this Halloween theme here. So specifically, to get into the spooky feels, this is a book I've shared before in my What's in the Box, What's in the Bag series. I had a special holiday edition where I pulled out the Trick or Tarot. And this is the accompanying bogey book that you can get with that. Now, I say accompanying, not as in it comes with it. No, if you buy the deck, you get this little white book. But separately, whether you have the deck or not, anyone can hop on Amazon or Duck Soup's website probably and get this bogey book. And it is a guidebook. The center section is dedicated to an elaboration on the meanings of the cards, an explanation for the art that appears. So obviously you have your majors, the quartz are set apart. The typesetting leaves something to be desired. But aside from that, okay, here we're into the minors. Yeah, aside from that, it is really enjoyable to really dive into the artwork of this uniquely styled deck. So if you don't have the deck, and I will say it's a pricey one, so you may not want it just for that reason. But if you do have an interest in taking a gander at the artwork and everything, it's fun just to have the book simply for that, so you can get a closer look at these cards. It is in black and white, so you miss out on the color schemes, but it is fun to read through, and it's a fun way to get these interpretations for Halloween of the cards. And you could always do a bit of bibliomancy if you wanted, just flipping through to choose a card. But why I also am showing this book as a book you could just get on its own is because it is just delightfully old school in its approach to Halloween. It is so much more than just a tarot guidebook. Kicking off with these photos of the author and artist from Halloween gone by, some personal memories, and there's a section on setting the stage for your tarot readings with this deck or with any Halloween themed deck that you like, which is fun as far as like decorations, even music to set that background. But then we get this nod to an old school bogey book. This particularly coming from 1919, the sources of Halloween. So we get a history here of Halloween along with more vintage images of the greeting cards. Samhain, the coming of Christianity, All Saints, All Souls. And then I think it gets into like how it came to be celebrated in different countries, Ireland, England, Wales, America. So it's just interesting. It's informative, but then also through this lens of like this old bogey book from 1919. And then after the card meaning section that falls at the center, then you get this 1912 guide to games for Halloween, which is very fun. You can see with some of these things, walnut boats, dumb cake, Halloween souvenir game. A lot of these games are like about meeting the person you'll marry. Okay, let's read one of these. What's my thought like? The players sit in a circle and one of them asks the others, what's my thought like? It's kind of a weird way to ask that question, isn't it? Like not, what am I thinking? What's my thought like? One player may say, and I hope they do, a monkey. If you're playing this game with me and I ask you, what's my thought like? If you ask, or if you guess a monkey, you're probably right, like 98% of the time. I am probably thinking of a monkey. The second might ask a candle, the third a pin, and so on. When all the company have compared the thought to some object, the first player tells them the thought. Perhaps it is the cat. So yeah, maybe the other 2% of the time I might be thinking the cat too. And then asks each in turn why it is like the object he compared it to. He, not a she or a they. Remember, this is dated. Why is my cat like a monkey is asked. which I personally think is like one of the best questions I've ever heard in my life. And I'm going to try to figure out how to squeeze this question into any context that I can from now on. This just like speaks to my soul. Why is my cat like a monkey? The other player might answer, because it is full of tricks. Why is my cat like a candle? Because its eyes glow like a candle in the dark. Why is my cat like a pin? Because its claws scratch like a pin. Are you kind of following what's happening here? So anyone who is unable to explain why the thought resembles the object he or she or they mentioned must pay a forfeit. And I would love to know what, perchance, in 1912, that forfeit might have been. Do you forfeit some candy? Do you think people were playing strip? What's my thought like? I don't know. Oh, True Lover Test. I'm sorry. I went back to it because I thought it said True Lover Ted. And I was like, oh, what's this Ted all about? What's Ted like? But no, it's test. I just can't read. Cellar stairs. Cellar stairs test is where girl boldly goes downstairs backward, holding a mirror and trying to catch in it the features of him who is to be her mate. Do you see what I'm talking about? So much of this relates to mating. Why does it have to be a girl? This sounds dangerous. Going down cellar stairs, backwards, looking in a mirror and not where she's actually walking, that is dangerous. Don't try this at home. Wow. Okay, so I mean, can you see why I just think this book is a hoot and why I'm offering it up as one of my 4 here, as one you might like to get, even if you don't own the Trick or Tarot deck. Anyone can get this book. If you like Halloween and you kind of want to get into like the history, the roots of it, and see how it was celebrated years ago, because that is something that is always evolving. Halloween today is different from how it was in times of yore. That's just fun to dive into. But there you go. Do not spook until spookin' too. Instead, check out the rich collection of Halloween lore moldering between the covers of this peculiar book. For in addition to the usual card meanings and tarot spreads essential to any companion tarot volume, you'll find a brief history of the holiday, vintage party games for your ghoulish get-togethers. Except for the cellar game, don't do that. Don't do the cellar stairs one. And an array of the most wonderful vintage Halloween images ever seen this side of Transylvania. Halloween is the best holiday of the year. No bias. But yeah, it's my favorite. And now we have a tarot that will make everyone into mystical trick-or-treaters all year round. Okay, I've banged on enough about this book, but I love it so. Okay, so then also to harken back to a deck that I previously shared, we have Madame Lydia Wilhelmina's tarot, and this was the basic guidebook. You see the cards, and then you just get these brief blurbs on each. It doesn't go into great detail, but that's not actually the book I'm featuring here. What I recently acquired, as in just this week, is Madame Lydia Wilhelmina's Grimoire. You can find this at Amazon. Look at this. It's huge. It doesn't even like fit into the screen here. But basically, just like the Trick or Tarot Bogey book, you do get an elaboration on these card meanings, as well as some insight into why certain imagery was chosen for each depiction. But you also get this sense of Lydia scrapping together this book and adding in spells and book quotations, other notations just related to the concept being explored some historical notes at times. Like, noted astronomer Johann Kepler found his mother accused of witchcraft in 1615. She in her captivity was threatened with torture if she did not confess, yet she refused to do anything of the sort. Eventually, she was let free. Phew. But that goes on. But that idea of mother spoken to in terms of the witch mother depicted in the strength card of this tarot deck. Upright strength represents showing compassion, to have strength and control, reversed weakness or a lack of self-control. So we're given this snippet of a mother who showed great strength in the trials that she was facing. So it's just interesting. It's like this patchwork of seemingly unrelated sources, commentary, but it does all have a common thread as relates to the tarot card at hand. And it is presented in the voice of Madame Lydia Wilhelmina. And here you do get these images in color, whereas the other guidebook did not have that. So I wanted to share this book as well as an option, not just to enhance this deck if you do already have it, but if you don't have the deck. Because as an independent deck, it is also going to be more expensive than a mass market deck. So maybe that's the barrier for you, or the fact that it is not always available. And sometimes you've got to wait a while for it to come around again. And if you do want the deck, but you don't want to have to wait for it to already dive into what it's all about, this book can be bought separately. And I think it's something to enjoy even if you don't have the deck. And that happens to me a lot, actually. There's a deck I might appreciate, but I don't actually want to own it. You know, I don't have the space for it. I don't need another deck. But I'm interested in the world that the creator has built around it. And I think the artistry is beautiful. This is a perfect way to appreciate every single card in this deck if you don't have it. And again, use it as a bibliomantic tool to pick a card or 2 or 4 or 7. You know, do a spread that way by just flipping through and landing on a page that intuitively calls to you. And you get an even bigger rendering of the cards to even better appreciate what elements are included in there. And as you can see here, the minor arcana cards don't always have a lot of extra grimoire elements, but oh, look at that. I mean, it still continues to be supplemented with extra info in this section, including the Victorian language of flowers. And look at this. It's a whole glossary, basically, for that. The Lover's Moon, in tribute to Gomez and Morticia. Oh, gosh. I want to read this, but the font is actually kind of hard for me to make out. Oh, it's a ritual bath for lovers. Ooh, so it's instructions on a ritual bath. And then here we have this note: love that is day and night, love that is sun and moon and stars, love that is crimson, sumptuous, sick with perfume, no other words but words of love, no other thought but love. And that is by Walt Whitman. So do you see what I mean? Just this little kind of scrapbooky feel of this and that's to enhance these cards, this deck, and just a tome to appreciate easily on its own if you wanted to. So I was going to close by reading some of this. We have, for the Page of Wands, the woman in mourning attire. And for that, we have this long entry by Madame Lydia. I believe death should not be seen as the dark place it has represented for so many centuries. Death is but a doorway to the next place. The process of grief should be met with a certain understanding of what will happen and what must be experienced to move forward. The bleak ideas of the past concerning those who have passed needs to be brought more into the current moment. Just skipping ahead. Cling to those things and moments that make you feel whole, that remind you of someone you may have lost, and anything that is good. Look to the woman in mourning attire and really look at her expression. Her face could be read in so many different ways, but I like to think her eyes suggest someone who knows and understands. She wears not a true smile or a smirk, but again, an expression of knowing. She is embedded in tradition and what helps her move on. We should all embrace her thoughtfulness. So it's just kind of a different take on Page of Wands than I would consider, but I just wanted to read a bit of that too, just to capture the essence of this season that we have entered as we approach Samhain and All Souls, Day of the Dead, however you might be celebrating this time of the veil thinning and honoring those who have gone before. And yes, perhaps mourning, perhaps grieving them, but hopefully also celebrating their lives. Just thought that would encapsulate a bit of that. And look how gorgeous this is for Queen of Wands. It's really lovely. So I present it to you as my third book for this Halloween edition of 54321, and I am going to be diving into this personally this month. So finally, with regard to the themes discussed, that segues into my fourth book choice here, the Book of Seances. This is another book I am diving into this month, have not yet started, but this is by Claire Goodchild, creator of the Antique Anatomy Tarot. And I've got the Oracle of Oddities. Claire's decks are distinctive in this vintage anatomical style, largely black and white, but you do get soft tones of other colors integrated throughout. And this is a combined deck. Oracle of Oddities actually has, I think there are three. It's three editions that are smaller, and so I've just merged them together. And when I say editions, there wasn't overlap. Maybe one or two cards were identical, but they were actually, I should say, expansion rather than addition. They were additions to the original deck. And this is a great one, just to throw in a rogue extra deck here. I appreciate really expansive keywords. But anyway, again, you don't have to have this deck or any of her decks to appreciate her artwork and guidance here, because this whole book is illustrated in this aesthetic, and it's just gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. These full page illustrations. Oh gosh. And it's just so beautiful. So you can just have the book just to appreciate her artwork. But then also we've got introductory stuff here, starting quite simply with what is death, what is divination, what are seances and spiritualism, and then the other side, which addresses what is a spirit, what is a ghost, what types of entities exist, are there different realms, who can communicate with the dead, yada da da da. So then it gets more into like actionable things that you can do, like how to perform a seance, and then using cartomancy, automatic writing, bibliomancy, spirit board, tasseography. And it asks, what is tasseography? And I asked myself the same question until I looked it up and I saw, oh, that is divining with tea leaves. And then rhabdomancy refers to the practice of dowsing. So whether you're using like sticks or rods or a pendulum perhaps. And then a scientific seance, more types of casting divination, more types of scrying divination, and then caring for your tools. But what I think is of interest here, because in my last video, I went on this whole thing about where I'm like, I'm weary. I don't use my cards to communicate with the dead. And then what do? I go and get a book of seance. So what the hell? Am I telling the truth, or am I a filthy liar, or what is going on here? But I'm going into this book with a healthy curiosity, as it is aimed to both the believers and the non-believers. And well, let me just share it with you in her words. For believers, like many of you, I had a paranormal experience at a young age that solidified my position in the great "are ghosts real" debate. That's usually how it starts, isn't it? Something happens that you truly can't explain, and you spend the rest of your life looking for answers. Lucky for us, we are living at a time when the belief in the paranormal is not only accepted, but increasingly popular. Paranormal stories and resources are abundant, and while this information provides an avenue for advancement in spiritual research, it makes it even more important that you not blindly believe everything you see or hear. Use your intuition and critical thinking skills during every step of your spirit communication journey. For the non-believers, like you, I also have a healthy dose of skepticism toward all things paranormal. Even though we may be on opposite ends of the spectrum of belief, I feel like there is a lot to be learned from one another. Of course, I don't think this is the book that will convince you that ghosts are real, and I quite frankly didn't write it with that purpose in mind. However, I do think you will enjoy the history of divinatory tools I have included, along with the folklore and paranormal stories that have helped shape the human relationship with spirit communication and the great unknown. And if you feel up for it, give some of the divination methods a try. You never know what might happen. This does come with a warning, however. Spirit communication should not be attempted if you suffer from delusions, hallucinations, or any type of untreated mental illness, including depression or anxiety. And again, I don't know where I stand on this. I have no judgment for people using their cards and other divinatory tools this way. None whatsoever. I tread lightly around it just because I don't have expertise. I don't know how to properly protect myself if I were to venture into that. And I don't know. I guess I do generally feel like there is something to it. I am a spiritual person, and so I think that I am a believer when it comes to this. I am just interested at the very, very, very least in learning about Claire's approach here. And if it were something I were to dabble in, I just want to do it responsibly, but I feel like reading this book will help me determine or not whether that is for me. I generally feel like, no, it's not, but I think it's cool and I want to know more about it. But anyway, to bring it back to the tarot as my fourth tarot-related book, well, aside from the fact it is written by a deck creator of both tarot and oracle, here's our section on cartomancy, which of course encompasses multiple systems involving the use of cards, but Claire here goes directly into the tarot specifically. And there is a bit of guidance here if you are new to the tarot. There is some cursory background on it, I guess how it could work for spirit communication, but we've got a bit of history here. We've got, well, a paranormal anecdote on how Claire used tarot after the death of a friend. It actually helped to locate him when he went missing. It's a quite brief but very moving story. Guidance on choosing a deck. Myths of tarot, how to read the cards. So great for beginners. And then for those who are seasoned readers, ways that you can then use your cards if you actually wanted to communicate with spirit. And I think this is really neat. This ancestor or spirit guide spread. Paranormal investigation spread. Cool. Starting with like, tell me about yourself. How did you die? And though I still have to like properly dive in and read all this, I did see that she recommends largely separating out the court cards as tools for determining if you're communicating with the spirit, whose it might be. So again, for new and seasoned readers alike, there are meanings for each of the tarot cards here. There's the traditional meaning, but then also in this context, the spirit message that might be attached to it. For the majors, all of the minors, and then here's where getting into the court cards as the potential spirit, we can see certain traits that correspond to maybe help us identify who that person is, which is just cool. So here we get into the other means of divination for this purpose, and I just find it fascinating. And as Claire did in showing this, if made you interested in getting it for yourself or just trying this sort of communication in general with your cards or whatever tools, just do heed, the warning. Be careful. Make sure you know what you're doing, basically, and look to someone with some experience who can advise on how to best and most safely approach something like this. Be careful out there. So that's my fourth book. Just to recap, the Book of Seances, Madame Lydia Wilhelmina's Grimoire, Trick or Tarot Bogey Book, and the Lily Blue, which is the book I'm currently reading, the third in the series of this Raven Cycle series kicked off by the Raven Boys. Next up, we're counting down from 4 to 3. So I will now present to you 3 tarot spreads that I think are quite fun and also meaningful for this time of year. Definitely in the essence of Halloween, but not a novelty. There's real insights to be gained here. So starting off, I want to give a nod to one spread that I created myself and I do use often, and not necessarily just at this time of year. It is one that I have found effective for shadow work, and it is also one that I have previously done an entire video on. So I will share a bit from that original video, as well as link it below if you want to see the whole thing with a sample reading included. But that would be my haunted house spread. Our first card is going to be the Ghost in the Attic. What haunts you? The next floor down, the skeleton in your closet. Something you are consciously aware of, but hiding or avoiding. And then this is an advice card for that on how you can expose that and confront it. So throwing that door open to the closet to expose that skeleton and just face what it is you're trying to hide away from others. Whereas going down subterranean into the basement, we've got the body in the basement. This is a body that you have buried. So it could also be something that you're aware of but repressing. Or it could be a factor you're not aware of, or you're not aware that you are repressing. And so then the advice card is accordingly. How do you dig that up? And likewise, expose this body in the basement and face what it is that you've been, squashing down, or may not even be aware that you're doing that. This is more of a conscious, subconscious type thing. So then you could continue with the next 2 cards using the same tarot deck, but I like to use oracles. And so for this upper floor, we have a window here. And this window is something that lets the light in and something you could open to help clear the air. So basically, in the context of this reading, it's just an extra insight to shed light on something that you've uncovered here, and maybe offers a bit of clarity if you're not getting it from the other cards, or could just add that extra added bit of nuance. This is another case where if you are using another deck, you could just use the same one for these two positions. I like to mix it up and use like a smaller one for the window upstairs, and then bring in a bigger oracle for the door to this haunted house. This represents your way out. It is advice for you on how, once you have identified and faced your fears, how you can be the final girl running out of the house of terror in the end as that final parting message. So by no means am I the first person to have come up with a haunted house themed spread, but that is the one that I came to develop for myself, which, yes, has a little fun with the theme, but like I said, I have found it effective, and it's something I like to use with 3 different decks, 1 tarot, 2 oracle, but you could easily just do it with 1 deck too. But it's very, very fun to do with these spooky decks this time of year, I will say. Just, again, appealing to that kid at heart. It makes it fun while you're diving into some, kind of tough territory when it comes to shadow work. So to share spreads by others that fit with this time of year, like to harken back to the Trick or Treat Tarot. There is a fun spread in here that I used last year when I first got this deck. Thought it was just great in keeping with the theme. And that is the Trick or Treat spread. This is a quick spread that can be interpreted quickly. You can take the positions as simply or deeply as you like. For example, the costume position can simply be your attitude toward the situation. You can dig deeper by thinking about costumes that can be changed. If the bag of candy position isn't to your liking, perhaps changing your costume, that is your attitude, might change the outcome. If this happens to you, go through your deck and pick a card that represents a different costume or attitude you could adopt. Then shuffle the rest of the deck and lay out the other 3 cards to see how it changes the situation. So just to show you right here, the first position is your costume, how you are approaching the situation. Number 2 is the trick, a challenge or obstacle to overcome. Number 3 is treat, something that helps the situation. And 4 is bag of candy, what you get or the result of the situation. So this is tried and tested. I did a reading actually for someone else using it in addition to myself, and it was good. And again, it's like one of those things where, yeah, it's got the novelty in keeping with the spirit of Halloween, but it's a real reading with real results. So that is one I love a lot. And of course, gotta love doing the Trick or Treat spread with the Trick or Treat Tarot. Not to be confused with the Trick or Tarot, which was the other deck that I showed above. And yes, I'm digging this bogey book back out just because, well, there's a couple of spins on this jack-o'-lantern spread. And where did I see the other one? Oh, yes. The Halloween Oracle has a spin on that as well. So let me just get that ready to share with you in tandem. So they both call it the jack-o'-lantern, but I just think that is a super fun shape and theme to have for this time of year. And this approach to it has the 2 eye cards at the top here, indicating what the querent perceives. So that's clever. I like that. The nose card indicates what is in the air. Ooh, so that could be like the energy surrounding the situation or something impending, something wicked that this way comes, you know? I think that's open to interpretation. But then the mouth, and here they're using 5 cards, indicate what the querent brings into the world. So interesting. I feel like that could be elaborated on. You could just give each of these its own meaning. This could be something giving voice to the situation since it is the mouth. I think that there's room for play with that. Which is why I wanted to also show this other spin on it, which doesn't use as many cards. But the Halloween Oracle has the 2 eyes, but in this case, they mean different things. So we've got card 1, the heart of the issue or question. Card 2, the hidden issue. Card 3, the major obstacle. Card 3 being the nose. And then in the mouth, just 3 cards. The main fear, the solution, and what will happen if you engage the solution. So I'll be honest, I don't think I have done this spread before, but it is one that I want to try. Either of the versions, chances are in playing around with that, I'll end up coming up with one of my own. I feel like it is something I have previously brainstormed, but in any case, just showing you that general setup, I think it's a good springboard for you to come up with your own ideas of what the different card positions mean. I'm just offering it up here as an idea of how you could do a fun Halloween-themed spread. So those 3 spreads being then some variation of the Jack-o'-lantern, the trick-or-treat spread, and then, of course, my haunted house spread, which brings me down to 2. 2 is for tarot paraphernalia or tarot habits, or I should say and or tarot habits. So I'm going to go for the paraphernalia right now, but it's not strictly tarot. I happen to add just 2 new things to my tarot table specifically for this month. So those are the 2 things that I'm going to grab. Starting with this candle in the corner here, the Mystic Oracle Scarlet Pumpkin Scented Candle. And it has a kitty on the top. And oh my goodness, how I wish that in opening this lid, I could waft the scent through the camera to you. Sorry, I just had to take a sniff of it myself. It smells so good. So I love this candle for this time of year for obvious reasons. Pumpkin spice. So that, let me tip this up so you can see where I'm placing them. So that is gracing this corner of my table right now. And over here, oh my God, this has nothing to do with tarot, but I love it so much. Of course, it's a snow globe. It is giving me crystal ball vibes here, though. And instead of snow, we have some black glitter that is sprinkling over a little cemetery scene. If you can see in here, the headstones and that bare tree. And can you see the, let me get something lighter behind. I don't know. Can you see the little crow or raven that is on that headstone? Fun, fun. It is also a music box, which I would like to play for you, but if I wind it up now, I'm not going to be able to stop it. So I don't want to have to wait for it to end in order for me to resume speaking again. So I will wind it though. For my outro, I will let the music see you on your way out of my little haunted Halloween installment here. So thank you for your patience on that. So there's 2, it's not like technically tarot paraphernalia, but it is gracing my tarot table for the season, which brings me down to 1, which is either a piece of tarot advice or a card that I would like to embody. And in this case, I'm cheating and I'm not going with tarot. I would like to go with an oracle card that I have chosen for not just me, but all of us. Nesting together in here are my Seasons of the Witch, Mabon, and Samhain oracles, but the one I am using is Stacey DeMarco's Halloween Oracle, a tried and true deck for me this time of year. And to show some of it, I don't want to reveal the card that I've picked yet. This deck, I mean, it's not the biggest deck, can be limited in options, especially when several of the cards are all skulls. But each skull has its own facet that it's representing, and there's just a lot of classically Halloween imagery in here, and I just love it, and I enjoy the guidebook, so this is a good standby for me. The card in question that I have chosen for this, the card that I would like to embody and actually just impart to you all, specifically at this time of year, is hearth. Happiness in our hearts and homes. So I will begin by sharing what the guidebook has to say about it. The hearth of every home, the fire that unites, winter's warmth centers, stories, love, and delights. The ancient Romans believed that every home had a heart, and it was the hearth. Where the fire burned, the family gathered for sustenance, communication, and protection. This concept was so important to the culture that there was a huge city hearth, the Vestal Temple, where the fire of the home goddess, Vesta, burned forever without ever going out. This sacred flame was protected by the soldiers with their very lives should there be an invasion. The place where the goddess Vesta was honored within every ordinary home was also the hearth, and it is where women prepared food and cooked. Some of the food was always offered back into the fire as an offering to Vesta for her blessing and protection. Often husbands were sent away on military duty for years on end, and their wives at home were not just expected to keep the home and often the business running, but to wait for their husbands faithfully until their return. They prayed to Vesta to ensure their family members' safe return and to keep the fires of love stoked. The saying, "Keep the home fires burning," was inspired by this practice. Should the hearth card appear in your divination, you are being asked to look to your idea of what home and family is for you. Take the time to build up your love fire and have it burning brightly. Make your relationships a priority. If there is conflict within your home and family, it is time to take concrete steps to address the issue for good. If you are a member of your family is away from home due to travel or work, know that protection is being given. Now, I don't work with deity specifically, at least not something more specific than just the greater idea of God, source, energy, however you might look at it. But as far as like honing in on one particular facet of deity as depicted through God or goddess, as I contemplated if that were a sort of practice I would do, I was thinking through which deities resonated with me the most. And I always thought that my deity would be, if I were to do this, Vesta or Hestia, as she's also known. I believe that's the Greek version of the Roman Vesta. So I was delighted when recently, in my monthly practice of drawing a card from this Divine Feminine Oracle, I, for the first time, received Hestia, aka Vesta, the goddess of sanctuary. And the mantra is what I really want to drive home here. No matter where I am home. The most sacred sanctuary is found within me. In this guidebook, We learn who Hestia is, but it also shares that Hestia created the concept of sanctuary. It's considered a sacred obligation to shelter and protect those in need. She wants us to seek those situations that allow us to feel a sense of being home, or she wants us to create that form of sanctuary for someone else. Of all the wild and crazy adventurous Greek gods and goddesses, Hestia is the most drama-free. She's the one who can be counted on, the one who fosters community and provides the stability of food and warmth and shelter when all else is coming undone. She's your grandmother goddess. She's the energy that whispers for you to just get cozy. Hestia wants you to be 1,000 leagues easier on yourself. Put a blanket over your body, curl up with hot tea, sit before the fire of all that you've accomplished, and give your mind a break from all that you ask of yourself. Hestia wants you to let kindness pervade your thoughts. She wants you to light a small fire in the center of yourself and feel safe in calling your body home. She wants you to be able to seek sanctuary within. She wants you to come home to yourself and to give yourself the love that you effortlessly offer others. Hestia is the call to become the calm harbor for your beautiful soul to thrive. And in this deck, you get a soul voice meditation. Am I a safe place to be? And again, that beautiful intention, no matter where I am home. The most sacred sanctuary is found within me. Now, in case this isn't how you would see Hestia, I also pulled from the Goddess Oracle this visual depiction of Hestia as well. Zoom back in here. These lovely ladies. So again, speaking to this idea of the hearth as embodied by Vesta or Hestia, just to share a bit from this guidebook. Hestia has come to tend her hearth fire in your life and to tell you it is time to focus on home. Whether you are living alone with your family or with friends, it is time to make your home a priority. Perhaps you are living in a house that is not your home or with people you don't want to live with. Perhaps your home is filled with so many others that you have no space of your own. Perhaps your life is such a busy whirlwind that your dwelling is not your home, merely a place to change clothes and sleep. Now is the time to come home. Hestia says that wholeness is nurtured when you learn to come home to yourself and then to create the appropriate physical manifestation, a home that will nurture you. So what I love about this is the repeated theme of finding home in yourself. It's not just about the physical home you live in and what physical hearth might be in that home. And this is really speaking to me. Well, it does all the time. I'm a homebody. I'm all about the home and hearth. And I struggle, though, with the back and forth that I do have between the US and the UK. Being here in the UK where I live with my husband, who is family, but then my family that I'm from back in the US. And especially resonating now because I just returned this week from a month and a half overseas, visiting with family, visiting the home that I grew up in and has the most special hearth in my memory. And I'm speaking literally, my parents' fireplace. Soon after I left Chicago, my mom sent me a picture that she had taken of her fireplace after she had lit a fire and had her decor out for autumn. And it just, it just elicited like an immediate pang in my heart because that is my childhood home. Sorry, my voice is getting a little emotional there. But, I was very busy seeing everyone in the last several weeks. And when there was downtime, to be back in that home that I do still consider home, with my mom, I would sit right next to that fireplace. And that's where we would just watch TV or we would just chat and decompress together. And that fireplace, the room it's in is actually, it's now a family room, but Originally, it was the garage that was attached to my parents' house. And when I was 3 years old, my dad decided to convert it into a family room to expand on the house since our family had expanded. They thought they were just going to have 3 kids, and then I came around as the oops. So, oops, baby, gets a room addition, basically. So my dad put all this labor into it, and he had help from relatives and friends in the neighborhood coming in. I believe it was a friend just down the street that helped to build the fireplace that is in the home. And the mantle of it is from my grandparents' barn, one of their barns that blew down in a tornado. And my mom asked if she could have that. And so that is just such a central, meaningful piece of that particular hearth. There is family built into this fireplace. There are friends built into this fireplace. There is just blood, sweat, and tears. And that hearth has been such a center for the holidays, any photos taken, we were often made to pose there, whether it was as children or with dates before a school dance. That's the room where we all gather on Christmas Eve every year. I'll actually share a picture I recently found of the first Christmas that we spent in that room. It wasn't finished yet, but in 1979, it was at a stage my mom deemed was ready enough to start moving some furniture in. So we celebrated our first Christmas in that family room in 79, and have been doing so every year since, the one exception being, of course, 2020 because plague. So anyways, that hearth has tremendous meaning to me. That room has tremendous meaning to me. It truly is a family room. It is the very room where my dad passed away last year, and we were all gathered around him at that hearth. Sorry, so I've just felt the quintessential essence of this feeling of hearth and home in a really literal way. But, I can't always be in that home. That home very likely won't always be in my family. The rest of the time when I'm in the UK, I need to find this sense of home here as well. And that's been the biggest challenge as an expat. What is home? And so this card, it just made me want to cry when I drew it, because this is what I continually need to remind myself, that no matter where I am home. The most sacred sanctuary is found in me. No matter where I am or who I'm with. I think it's just such an important thing to hold on to, because we all have very different home lives. And as this goddess oracle referred to, sometimes that home and the people that we share it with, that might not always be the most pleasant thing. It may not be what gives us peace and solitude. And so it's just the way that we carve it out within ourselves. And I especially thought of this card at this time of year as well, just because I think this is why I love Halloween, Samhain, spooky season so much. It's the coziness. It's the coming home of it. It's this time where we have past that vibrancy of summer, and we're seeing everything decay and fall away again, and bring us into that wintry world of death and change and remembrance, and another cycle ending and a new one beginning. And that earlier, warmer, verdant time was a very outward, external time. And this is where we're starting to come back indoors. The weather is cooling. The heaters are turning on. These radiators are about to be fired up soon here, I can tell you that. And yes, fires lit in the fireplace. Obviously, my mom was already lighting hers the other day. Sometimes she does it even if it's not cool out. It's just the feeling that it gives, not just the physical warmth, but the the actual heart warmth. I mean, when you think of something being heartwarming, you know, she lights that fire now and she looks at it as like, that's what my man built for me. The man who loves me gave me my fireplace because that's what I wanted. And you know, it just means everything. And we've seen 2 more generations, you know, cry and laugh and mourn and celebrate in that very space. And it's that feeling. We attach it to physical things, to physical symbols, but it's not about the physical material thing as much as the essence of it that we can just create in our own minds and hearts and souls. And hopefully, as the one oracle description said, manifest it physically for ourselves. Like if we can find that sanctuary, that safe space within ourselves so that we can find that wherever we are, then hopefully there is somewhere in this material world, on this plane, that we can carve out that safe space for us as well. That sanctuary, a place for solitude, but also community. And I think that's what's really fun about this time of year too, the sense of community. Even though I know there's like stranger danger, and it seems like with the advent of trunk or treat that is created as like a safer way for kids to trick or treat if people aren't feeling as safe unleashing their kids in a neighborhood and having them walk from house to house and greeting strangers and receiving candy from them. You know, however you might feel about that, it is still a sense of community. I love it that like we are actually venturing out of doors and coming into communion with each other, and we're sharing, we're giving and receiving. Even if it's just candy, that's fun. That's a treat, and we all deserve a treat now and then. And it feels good to get it, but it also feels really good to give it. And of course, this can be taken figuratively as well. But again, the thing that I love so much about this trick-or-treat tarot, the sense of Halloween parties that it gives me, that is people coming together and celebrating and being silly, and with in mind still this idea of death and loss and fear, but we found a way to just sort of face it in a safe and even fun way. And that's important as we do acknowledge and accept and flow with the cycles of our lives, and that cycle of going outward but then returning inward to replenish, that sense that brings us back to hearth and home, whatever that might be for us. And so to bring this back to the tarot, I feel that, well, as far as Vesta Hestia goes, with that element of fire, of course, Queen of Wands could be a fitting tarot equivalent for her, for that element. And I'm saying her, but how about just that feminine aspect? So the feminine fire element of Queen of Wands, yes, but I'm feeling more so the Queen of Pentacles that I see represented in Vesta Hestia as well. And here we literally have the hearth depicted in this Trick or Treat tarot card. For this court card, the sense of like nurturing, and I know this woman is dressed up as I think the witch for Hansel and Gretel, so in which she could be using that warm and bright hearth to help lure the children in. But this person here is in costume, so I see someone who is just actually nurturing. If the kids come to her, she's going to share that cookie. She's not going to lock them in the cage. It's just a doll. It's not real. It's not real. Don't be scared. So to bring this ramble fest to somewhat of a close, if I can, I guess what I just want to impart here for me, you, and all of us here is finding that sense of warmth, of security, of nurture. Not just finding it for ourselves, but finding ways to provide it for others. Even if it's just filling your bowls with candy and handing that out to the kiddos this Halloween, because as it gets cooler and darker outside, the warm lights coming from within that we see through the windows, there is just such a draw to it. The lights that are put out to decorate for Halloween, the candles that are put inside a jack-o'-lantern. It's all so cozy. And for me, it's for this reason. Thank you so much if you stuck this out with me. This was a really long-winded ramble, but what fun. Thank you, Kelly Bear, for an absolute blast of a tag. And again, thanks to Juli and Marlena and Candy for tagging me to do this. I hope you don't mind the little turn that I took with it to make it all about Halloween, being very self-indulgent with that. But I hope there was some takeaway from it, and I will see you next time. Until then, keep the home fires burning. Bye.